Hello guys and welcome back to Planet 40k Tyranids. So in today's video we're going to be doing another review looking at one of the new detachments from the Tyranid Codex. Now in the previous video we spoke about the Crusher Stampede detachment, and this time we're going to be looking at the Unending Swarm detachment. So I'm going to be giving you a bit of a breakdown, giving you the detachment rule, giving you the enhancements, the stratagems, what I think to the detachment, and then we're going to end it with the pros and cons to actually fielding it. So let's get into it, and first we're going to talk about the detachment rule, which is Unsurmountable Odds. Get my tongue right. Unsurmountable Odds. Each time an enemy unit is selected to shoot, after that unit has finished making its attacks, if one or more models from one of your endless multitude units were destroyed as a result of the attack, so only one single model will do, then each unit can do a surge move. To do so you roll a d6, and that unit can move the distance on the d6 effectively. But you must end as close as possible to the closest enemy unit, excluding aircrafts. Then when doing so, models can actually be moved into engagement range of enemy units. Now you can't be doing this surge move if you are battle shocked. So only non-battle shock units can be doing this. Now what are the endless multitude units to begin? There's 4 of them within our codex. We've got the Termagants, we've got the Hormagaunts, we've got the Neurogaunts, and we've got the Gargoyles. So all the little bugs is what this applies to here. Now this is going to be especially useful for Hormagaunts, or Hormagaunts, Gants, I always get that mixed up. I think it's Hormagaunts, no, it's Hormagaunts. It's Hormagaunts because they're already pretty rapid. I mean, they've got the advance and charge move, but you're going to be moving them up the battlefield in your opponent's turn, in their shooting phase. And it's also pretty funny with Termagants because they've got their own ability where they can move in your opponent's turn as well. So they're going to be moving pretty quickly on top of that. Now this surge move can happen multiple times to a single unit in a single phase. You can just keep happening. If they keep targeting that same unit, you're going to keep moving them with a surge move. So it's kind of forcing our opponent to target a single unit to try and clear them, because they don't want them coming closer, so they're going to have to target that one specific unit rather than whittle down multiple units at the same time, because if they go for like 5 or 6 units at once, they're all going to get closer. Whereas what they need to be really doing is going after one unit. Yes, it gets closer after a few rounds of firing, but then they can finish the unit off and then it makes no difference. That's the way they need to play, but because we have that information, we know what they're trying to do, it can benefit us because we've got other units that are going to get there. Now it's worth noting that the detachment rule has no bonuses to non-endless multitude units, so it's purely the 4 that we spoke about. That doesn't mean you can't take them, of course you can still take them, but there's no actual detachment bonus to the non-units. So that's the detachment rule. Let's get into the enhancements. So we've got 4 new enhancements. Now bearing in mind you've got to get out of your head the invasion high fleet enhancements when we're talking about this detachment. So no adaptive biology, no, I forgot what the other ones are, that's on my head now. Ignore them, they're not here. We've got 4 that we can use. The first one is Relentless Hunger for 20 points. It's basically a +2 to our move characteristics for the bearer. So yeah, 2 in the model only, add 2 to the move characteristics of models in the bearer's unit. So you could stick this on, for example, a High Tyrant, and then not only the High Tyrant but also the Tyrant Guard will get a +2 to their movement. Yes, that's nothing to do with those units we spoke about, the endless multitude units, but you're still going to take other units within this actual detachment, aren't you? So that's the first one. The second one, Naturalized Camouflage, which is 30 points, and you're going to select 3 units within 9 inches of the bearer, and they're going to get cover. Now I don't know if I'm reading this wrong, but it says at the start of the first battle round you're selecting 3 units, but then it lasts until the end of the battle round. So surely it should just say at the start of each battle round, but it says the first battle round. So does that mean it only applies to the first round, or is that just an error, or am I being silly? I don't know. Whatever. Let's move on to the next one. I'm not entirely sure. Piercing Talons is next, 25 points. Units gain an extra AP, -1 AP for critical wounds. So, I mean, this would be good with Hormagaunts, but there are no actual leaders that can go with Hormagaunts, if that makes any sense. So how are we going to get critical wounds on Hormagaunts? We can't. We simply can't. So again, we're going to need a character that isn't an endless multitude or goes with endless multitude units. that also wants to get into engagement range. The final one, Adrenalized Onslaught, is 15 points, and units gain a +3 inches to their piling and consolidation moves. Yeah, that's not too bad. I mean, looking at all 4 of these from afar now, I mean, they're all in a kind of a weird spot because none of them really relate to the Endless Multitude characters. I mean, we've only got 2 characters that can relate to Endless Multitude characters. We've got the Winged Tyranid Prime. That will go with the Gargoyles. Are they going to have anything to do? I mean, they already got the movement. They don't need the Relentless Hunger. Cover, potentially cover, but they're probably deep striking in. Piercing Talons, I don't really want to get into engagement range anyway. And Adrenal Onslaught, that also applies to that. Is the Piercing Talons melee, or is it at range as well? Each time a modern bearer's unit makes an attack. Oh, it's just all attacks. So that could potentially work with the Gargoyles then, the Piercing Talons. Yeah, I mean, the other leader was the Neuro Tyrant with the Neuro Gaunts. You're not really going to put it on a Neuro Tyrant, to be honest with you, not for Neuro Gaunts. So you're going to have to find another leader that goes with another unit to use these enhancements on realistically. I mean, even if you're looking at something like a Broodlord, maybe they can use the +2 inch to their movement alongside Gene Stealers. They've already got the Scouting ability, so that can give them a first turn charge potentially. But the Broodlord isn't really going to need Piercing Talons with critical wounds because they've already got Dev Wounds, haven't they? So any Dev Wound, you don't actually have any AP because there's no save. It just goes straight to damage. Not mortal wounds anymore, thankfully, but it's straight to damage. I say thankfully like it's a good thing. It's not really a good thing, but straight to damage, no armor save, no inward save. So therefore the AP makes no difference. So a Broodlord wouldn't work with the Piercing Talons either. So yeah, and also I've noticed there's no cheap one. Normally you get a 10-point option, a cheap option. There isn't a cheap option here. The cheapest one is 15. That's your cheap one, I suppose. Let's move into the stratagems. So the first one is Synaptic Goading. It's 1 command point used in any phase on an Endless Multitude unit that is within Synapse range, and they've just made a surge move. So we've already explained what the surge move is from the detachment rule. So when you're making your surge move, you can re-roll the d6. So when you're doing your surge move, re-roll that d6. If you roll a bad one, maybe you got a chance of getting a better distance there. But also, you don't have to go towards the closest enemy unit. You can in fact go towards the closest objective marker. Now, unfortunately, you're going to be spending this command point pre-surge roll. So therefore, it might be slightly wasteful because if you roll a 6, that re-roll is just dead, isn't it? You've completely wasted it. However, the main use for this is being able to jump onto an objective rather than jumping towards the closest enemy unit, because that could get you. It could make your opponent lose secondary objectives potentially. Maybe it's going to get you your secondary objectives or get you ready for your primary objectives in your next command phase. There's all sorts of different reasons to gain any objectives really. You could also be using them to pull away rather than going forward to prevent your opponent from charging perhaps. So there's a lot of little uses in there. The second one is Unending Waves. Now this one is 2 command points. This is the pricey one, but it's actually really good. So you can do it in any phase. 1 Endless Multitude unit from your army that was just destroyed, so the whole unit's been wiped out, and you can use this stratagem on that unit even though they've been destroyed. Cool. So you're simply going to be adding an identical unit that you've just lost, but no leaders there, just purely the actual bodyguards part of the unit, and you're going to be putting them into strategic reserves at starting strength. Now, yes, it's 2 command points, but it's worth it most time. I mean, you could be bringing back 130 points of Hormagaunts, and you're not only just bringing them back, you're putting them into strategic reserves, which is also another little added bonus which goes under the radar. Because if you've lost the unit, then the likelihood is it's turn 2, turn 3. They're in strategic reserves now. You can now look on the battlefield, look for a weakness. Maybe the left flank's weak, maybe the right flank's weak. Maybe there's a gap in the enemy deployment zone, and you can now bring them on wherever you please, as long as you're on the 6 inches from the battlefield edge. Turn 3 could be any edge, so you're going to be a little bit more flexible with these rather than actually having them on the battlefield where your opponent's been literally drilling down on them and then you've actually lost the unit. Now there is a side note to add to this. There's actually no limit to the use of this stratagem, because you can use a stratagem once per phase, and this can be used in any phase, and there's no limits on how many times you can use it on a said unit as well. So ideally you want to make sure you've got at least 2 command points in your opponent's turn, or the start of your opponent's turn. Maybe a Swarm Lord can in fact assist you with this because he gives you CP. That's something to think about there. The third one is teaming masses for 1 command point. This is going to be done in your opponent's shooting phase or fight phase, or any of the fight phases rather, just after the enemy unit has selected its target. So they say, right, we're targeting you with this range attack or with these melee attacks. This is when you use it. So 1 endless multitude unit that was targeted from enemy attacks. Until the end of the phase, each time an attack targets your unit, it's at -1 to the hit roll. Nice and simple, nice and straightforward. It's an extra line of defense for your gaunts and gants and gargoyles, because realistically you want to hit back. I mean, you want your things to be alive, of course, so any defense is a good thing. But let's say you're in an engagement range, you're in a fight, you want to be keeping as many Hormagaunts alive as possible. So therefore, if it's a -1 to hit them, it means you're losing less, which means you can then hit back and potentially do more damage, or have more OC on an objective potentially. And then from the range side of it, it's pretty good against factions with a low ballistic skill. For example, Orcs. I think they hit on 5s. They've got ballistic skill 5. So making them have a -1 to, they're basically hitting on 6s, aren't they, at that stage? So that's going to really give you a massive defense boost for your units. The next one is swarming masses for 1 command point. In your shooting phase or any of the fight phases, 1 endless multitude unit from your army that has not been selected to shoot or fight this phase. Until the end of the phase, weapons equipped by the models have the sustain hits 1 ability, and if your unit contains 15 models or more, then each time a model in your unit makes an attack, unmodified hit rolls of a 5 score a critical hit. So Hormagaunts get 3 attacks naturally in melee, and if you get all 20 in, just as an example, you probably won't, but if you did, that would be 60 attacks. So if you've got sustain hits 1, you should be on average getting 10 more attacks with that, because obviously every 6 to hit would be an extra attack. But if you've got 15 or more models, then any 5+ is a critical, so therefore you're going to be getting 20 additional attacks there, or additional hits there. Now if you were to take the Invasion High Fleet, you could get this naturally with sustain hits against Infantry and Swarm. So that is a competition, if you like, for this stratagem. And this could be pretty good going alongside, say, for example, a Tervagon. If you've got a Tervagon with a Termagants, that Tervagon gives the lethal hits ability to those Termagants. So having lethal hits as well as sustain hits 1 and criticals on a 5+, is quite nasty. Especially if you've got your Devourers or even your Spinefish, you're getting a lot of shots there. And they're twin linked as well, right? Yeah. Next we've got Bounding Advance for 1 command point. In your movement phase, you can effectively automatically advance 6 inches rather than rolling for it. So this one's really good because if you're guaranteed a 6, especially in the early rounds when you need to get into the No Man's Land objectives to score, No Man's Land, extend battle lines, there's some secondary objectives that require you to get to those objectives in the No Man's Land. Having an auto 6 is just going to be useful for that kind of stuff, especially if you've got a slow-ish faction. Also, bear in mind that Hormagaunts can advance and charge, so if you're going to be moving their movement and then advancing 6 inches and then still charging, that's pretty good as well. I mean, it's also eliminating that risk factor when you're trying to get onto these objectives or trying to make a charge in a particular turn, because there's a 6, your movement, there's a 6 of the advance, so now you just have to take into consideration the charge move. So it eliminates one of those variables. Then the final stratagem is Preservation Imperative for 1 command point. This is in your opponent's shooting phase, just after an enemy unit has selected its targets. 1 endless multitude unit from your army that was selected as a target. Until the end of the phase, your unit is treated basically as having fewer than 5 models for the purposes of blast. So therefore blast is just being completely turned off because you've got fewer than 5. If you've not got 5, fewer than 5. So blast has been completely removed, so desolation squads do 1, yeah. Blast isn't a thing when you use this stratagem. That could be a real key thing if you're going up against, again, I always like to use my Necrons, Tomb Blades with a particle beamers. You can have 6 of them, or with D6 shots with blast. If you're turning blast off, that's probably going to keep your guys up and running. So that's a very good one to have up your sleeve. So that is all the stratagems. There's some pretty decent ones there. Some pretty decent, well, I'd say pretty strong ones in fact. Especially the one where you can bring back an entire unit. I think that one's the best one. It is 2 command points, but Keep doing that all game. Brilliant, brilliant. Let's get on to the pros and cons for the Unending Swarm. So starting with the pros, horde lists are themed and fun. Very similar to the Crusher Stampede. Hordes are also fun. Monster Mash is fun, hordes are fun. When you've got your horde lists, you've got your board control, because you've got so many models spread across the battlefield. You're likely going to be taking the objectives with ease, and all of our models are OC2. So you're taking over the objectives, swarming over everything, not allowing your opponent to have any movement, and they've got to literally fight through gaunts and gaunts and glants, and you know, they've got to get through all these bugs just to get to a certain location, so we can just flood the battlefield. They've got a decent detachment rule. I think it's a pretty decent one. That surge move can become very tactical and get you up the battlefield. Again, if you're pushing all your bugs forward because of this surge move, you're going to be getting more ground. And also, as we mentioned earlier on in the video, your opponent has to then focus on one unit at a time. They can't whittle down units, otherwise they're just going to be bringing everything forward for us, which is good for us. Very strong stratagems, again I've just mentioned it, but bringing back an entire unit, 130 point unit just like that for 2 CP, and you can just do it continuously. It really does feel endless. As for the cons, non-endless multitude units gain nothing from the detachment rule. It's purely the 4 that we spoke about, the gaunts, the gants, the gargoyles, and the neuro gaunts. They're the only 4 that really gain any buffs and bonuses, and all the stratagems, as you probably noticed, all relate to endless multitude units as well. The other con is the enhancement synergy. I'm not too keen on the enhancements, to be honest with you. Just scrolling back to it now, there's only really the winged Tyranid Prime that can relate to the endless multitude units with the gargoyles, but I wouldn't select any of them. I'm still on the fence of whether piercing talons actually works. It feels like it shouldn't because it's a talon, but if it doesn't say in melee, then it doesn't say in melee, right? Don't know. But yeah, that's my cons. Now, as for an overview for the Endless Swarm, it's definitely more competitive than the Crusher Stampede. I don't think the Crusher Stampede's that competitive, to be honest with you. And I'd say maybe even more so than the Invasion Fleet as well, which was the index launched detachment. I think it's more competitive than that. It does feel like we're going back to our roots with Tyranids, bringing back the hordes, and I do like that. I really do like that, and that's kind of what brought me into Tyranids in the first place. So I do like that, and I definitely want to be playing more games with this detachment in particular. But yeah, guys, you'll have to let me know what you think down in the comments below. Is it a detachment that you're going to be using? And if so, why? But yeah, make sure you are subscribing on your exits. Thank you all for watching. See you in the next one.